There's certain features on the NYTRX Pro right here that are not on other models or other sites in the marketplace that will definitely give you an advantage. A lot of guys won't mess with the third axis because they don't understand it. Now I know my riser is perfectly square. So I've been shooting HHA sights for years. I think they're the most durable, most accurate, have the best tapes, best features in the marketplace for sure. But they now have changed to providing Cerakote models, different colored sights. So you can see here, this is the slate color that we have in the package here. They also offer the moss, the hickory, desert sand, various other colors, as well as different wheel colors. So I'm shooting the Matthews Lift X in slate. So I thought what I would do this year, instead of running a black sight, I would go ahead and replace this, go to the slate color, so that way my sight matches my bow, and go through the whole process of setting up an HHA sight. It's very easy, but it's something that you need to understand. There's certain features on the NYTRX Pro right here that are not on other models or other sites in the marketplace that will definitely give you an advantage, not just as a bow hunter, but if you're into long distance shooting, you like to shoot tack, you like to be pinpoint precise out beyond 100 yards. There's a lot of these features in the NYTRX Pro that will give you that opportunity. So what we're going to do here is walk you through setting up the NYTRX Pro from the beginning. So this is a bridge lock system here. Now, HHA makes a pick rail, they make a bolt-on, and then they make the dovetail sight. So they have 3 different bracket configurations. The Lift X, I used a bridge lock, so it's very simple. Take this out. So the dovetail here was designed to fit in the bridge lock, and it is absolutely repeatable. I've taken this sight on, I've taken it off, I've gone back and requalified out to 100 yards, and it's absolutely perfect every time that you take the sight on and off. So let's open up the new slate colored NYTRX here. So here's what comes in the package. So this is our scope housing in here. All right. And then here is our mounting bracket. So you can see how well the colors match. I mean, that is going to be an attractive looking sight. This infinity system works extremely well. So you just loosen this bracket here, then it can slide inside the dovetail, and then you have little markers here on the sight. So we're just going to roughly just set this in a location now, because we want to have the greatest amount of travel possible. So there's no real secret to where you're going to start. It really depends on your individual bow setup. So there we go. Lock that in place, and we'll go ahead and pop this dovetail off. We don't need this. We're going to put it inside the bridge lock. Now you have 3 adjustment points here for the length. I like to go to the little dimple furthest up. So basically I'm pulling my sight back as far as I can. If you're into torque tuning, you'll understand that that's the best setup. So you just take this, slide it into the bridge lock right there. But with those 3 little dimples, you can certainly adjust how far your bar sets out. Put a little bit of tension on that. You can lock that in place. So there you go. That is pretty attractive looking. Now, one thing to pay attention, and when we go outside and shoot, is this is your sight in tape. This is not calibrated for various yardages. So what we're going to want to do when we sight this in is we're going to roll this all the way to 0. Okay, so when we set that up, that's going to be at 0, and that is going to be our 20 yards, because we're going to shoot 20 and 60. So if this is our 20 and we roll that sight up tape down to 40, let's just say that's where we end up at 60 yards, that's going to tell me which tape I'm going to use in my package. But we'll go through all of that right now, because the first thing that we have to do is we have to set up our first axis. Very, very critical to do this. It gives you that micro tuning ability. This is a sliding sight. So what that means is I'm moving this sight up and down and traveling like this. I want this rail right here, this bracket, to be perfectly parallel to the riser. Because what I don't want is, so if they're parallel and this is moving up and down like this, I track perfectly. If this is off a little bit and going like this, it's going to move my groups left and right depending on the yardage. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to square the bow up. There's lots of different level systems out there. This is the Hamsky. I've had good luck with that. Now I know my riser is perfectly square. Okay, so once I do that, let me roll this up to the top. I'm going to take this, I'm going to pop this on my sight bracket. So right now, this bubble is sitting off to the right. So what that tells me is this sight bracket is off in relation to the bow, just a small amount, not very, very much. So your second axis adjustment, or there's two screws right here. Let me grab this sight here. So here's your first axis adjustment. So this is your lock screw right here. So when I break that free, so by loosening this, see how I can wiggle this back and forth? You look at that screw head. The screw goes back and forth, left and right. So that's how I can get the small adjustments I need to square this sliding bracket with my bow. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. We're going to sneak in here and loosen our lock screw. So there's 3 axes that you need to pay attention to. And we're going to walk through the adjustment of all 3. So the first is probably the most critical because this sets up your slider square to your, so you can see how I'm moving this back and forth. Look at how much movement's in there. My bow's not moving, right? But look at the sight. This is a fantastic feature on the NYTRX Pro. So that is absolutely perfectly square. Remember, I squared my bow up. Now I'm squaring up axis 1. So that way, when I move the slider up and down, this slider rail is staying perfectly perpendicular to the bow. What I find is when you do this, tighten, 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 tighten. Start with your lock, then, which is your bottom one, and then go to your top bolt. You do not need to over tighten these, by the way. It's just that easy, okay? Square the bow, square the sight. Now I have to square the bubble. So if you look at this bubble here, it's way off to the side, way off. That's your second axis, okay? So this is when you draw your bow back, right? That is the bubble that you're leveling left to right. A lot of people, they'll go sight in at 20 yards and then they'll go shoot at, let's say, 60, and they're off to the left or off to the right, even though they held the bubble correctly. And it's because your second axis is off. So you need to level this to your first axis. So these 2 bolts right here, the top and the bottom, are what we're going to loosen up and make that adjustment. Okay, so we're going to come in here. And so it's these 2 bolts that we're going to loosen. So pop this in here, break that free, break this free. So as your sight's here, so you can see my sight go up and down. What I'm doing is I'm moving this bubble in and out. So if I'm there, see how I move it in, move it to one side, move it to the other. And all I want to do is get it right in the center and then lock it down. So now we're going to come in here. We're going to loosen these, loosen that. Now see how I can adjust this left to right, and that's moving my bubble right there. So I'm going to put my Allen wrench in the bottom. So this is your lock. It pivots on a little slot on the top. And now remember, everything's still leveled. Now I'm coming into this bubble, getting it right in the center. I'm snugging it down. So now this bubble is level. This level is on, and I've already leveled the bow. Level, level, level. Okay, crank her down. So that's axis 1 and axis 2. Axis 3 is down. So if you're sitting in a tree stand and I'm shooting down, or I'm shooting up in a mountain, right, you want to make sure that, so your third axis moves your globe this way, and moves it this way. You make that adjustment by loosening this screw and then driving it here. So what you're doing is you're pivoting your whole globe this way and this way based off of how the bow is canted. So what I'll do is I will pop this off of here. I'll put this on my riser. It's just easier to see it that way. Again, I know I'm perfectly square. So that's square, that's square, my bubbles. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to point this at a 45. When I go down here, then I level my bow. And now my bubble is slightly off to one side. So now it's slightly off to the right. So now if I were to shoot down and now my bubble naturally wants to go to the right, well, what am I going to do now? I'm going to correct and make the bubble go to the left. What's going to happen with my arrow? My arrow is going to go to the left. So I need to make the adjustment in my third axis. Loosen that. A lot of guys won't mess with the third axis because they don't understand it, or they haven't been taught, or the sight can't do it. If you're shooting small yardages, you'll never see this. If you're shooting big yardages, you will. So here's your third axis. You ready? See it? In, out. That's what you're moving. That in and out like that. So now when I pop around, put this little, by this driver screw, I can make some small little adjustments. So watch, I'm turning the screw. See the bubble move? Moving the bubble to the left. And now that bubble is centered at a 45. So I'll go ahead then. I'll go ahead and snug down my lock here. Perfect. All right. That is set. Now what we want to do is just to double check the other way. And now we're going to, again, we're leveling the bow with the level here off the riser. And the bubble's right in the center, so you can see right here. So that is your third axis. So your level here on your riser, and we're leveling the sight here, your third axis, in and out based off of shooting up and shooting down. So it takes a little bit of time. It's not very difficult to do. But again, you need to level all three axes of your bow. Level your bow, level your rail right here that travels up and down. Second axis goes this way. You're squaring that up to here. And then dynamically, when I put my bow at a 45, then I'm leveling my sight this way. So that way I have all three axes covered. So no matter what I'm doing, what my shooting form is, my sight is perfectly in line with the riser and how I hold it. All right, so now that we have all of that set, let's head outside and I'm going to show you how to use the sight-in tape and get your bow dialed out to 120 yards. So now that we have the sight installed, all three axes adjusted, now we're going to go sight this in for 20 yards using the sight-in tape. So this is the tape, we're going to put that on 0. Any adjustment that we make, we're going to make by loosening these two screws here and sliding the globe up and down the infinity bar. Because once this is set, now we're going to go roll the dial back when we pick out our 60-yard mark, and ultimately that will determine what our tape's going to be. So let's get our 20 dialed in. If we got everything set up correctly, this should be fairly close. All right, so I'm shooting way to the left. The height is good. So what we're gonna need to do here is go out probably there. All right. Group is good. All right, we're getting there. A little bit more adjustment. Height's perfect. If you find that you run out of adjustment, especially coming inside the riser, it's because your infinity bar needs to be flipped. So if you're shooting a bridge lock or you're shooting a pick lock, see how these bolts here, which is your second axis adjustment, in line with your wing nut here, they have to be on this side or your wheel side of the sight, because that brings the whole globe unit in towards the bow. So if you run out of adjustment, this bracket here can be flipped around. If you're shooting a standard bolt-on sight, then you're going to flip the bracket the other way around, which is how it comes standard in the box. There we go. Bingo, X. Okay, so we're locked in here. We got our 0 set. We have our windage set. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull those arrows and we're gonna walk back to 60. It's really critical though that you have to get 20 absolutely dialed in. So what I typically do is I shoot 20-60, 20-60, and then come back a second or third day and make sure nothing changes. Lighting changes, environment changes, you feel different certain days. But to get a good idea on where this factor should be, we've got everything set for 20. Pull our arrows, go to 60. Again, you can see here, we started here. These were our first 2 shots. Shot 1 and shot 2, I didn't move anything. Then I made 1 move, 1 final move. If you look at the line right here, okay, my up and down right there barely moved. I mean, maybe a 1/4 of an inch. So I feel really good about my location. Remember, what we're really worried about when we're shooting 20 yards is where I'm hitting up and down. Left and right, you can vary just a little bit, but this last shot was in the X ring, and I'm happy with that. Now, typically, when you go back to 60, I like to walk it back. So I'll go from, let's say, 20 to 40, and then I'll roll the knob a little bit. Maybe I'll go to 15 and just make sure I'm on paper. But I've shot this sight enough. Remember, we had this sight on the bow before. It's a black configuration, different pin configuration. I'm going to go ahead and roll this back to, let's say, 40, 45. I should be fairly close. At least I should be on the target from there, and we'll walk it in. A lot of times, if I really, really want to get dialed in on my tape, I'll take a 2-inch piece wide of tape, gaffer's tape, duct tape, and I'll make a horizontal line. So that way, for me, it's easier to float left and right, and not worried about hitting a bullseye. And that really helps get the elevation absolutely perfect. But here we're just gonna shoot at the bullseye. Felt good, shot was, all right, I'm high, but I'm on paper. That's the big thing. So take this adjustment there, let's dial it back to maybe 42, lock it in. This is just a sight in tape. This is not telling me yardage, it's just factors. And I'll show you what it means when we get it finalized here. The arrow flew great. Left and right was perfect. All right, left and right is still perfect. Remember, we leveled everything because remember, I rolled the wheel. If this first axis was off, it would go left to right. If my second axis is off, it would be floating left to right. And it's dead center perfect. I'm just need to back this off just maybe to 41. Lock her in there. maybe inch or two to the right. Wind is blowing a little bit. Shoot another confirmation shot. Okay, that one's a touch to the left. The height's perfect. So I think that's going to be our number. That's going to be 41. I'm going to shoot one more, get a good shot. The wind is just moving me back and forth a little bit. Again, I'm fine left and right. This is all about height. Perfect. Just because we can. Right, let's go see how we shot. All right, so shot one I was high, shot two I moved it down, and then the rest, again, I'm not worried about left and right. I'm worried about where I am height-wise. I mean, there isn't an inch difference between all of those. Now, 60 yards, I'll take it. But what I want to do is I want to be here, so I'm going to add 1 yard to that sight tape. So we're going to do that, but I'm going to actually go get my tapes and show you how easy it is from that sight tape to pick the number, put it on your wheel. We'll requalify 20, we'll go to 60, and maybe we'll go to 100. So we know from looking at the sight tape here, we need to put number 42 on the wheel. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our pre-printed tapes. These are the best in the marketplace. I'm telling you, they always have been. They're waterproof. They're highly visible. So as you can see, they're all different numbers here. So we're going to go to this sheet here. We're going to go to 42. So then we're going to take our sight wheel. Okay, so this mounts like this. What I typically do, everybody has their own way of doing this, is I like to have the locking screw up at the top. So I'll take my tape, I'll put it on there, right by the top, and then I'll just roll it down. It's that simple. Do not stretch this. Some people like to pull it. You see how I'm just laying it in that track right there? Trying to keep it even. These are all perfectly die cut. So when you get it set, you do everything right. See how the lines up perfectly. Perfect die cut. And then I go put a little smooth on it right there. Okay. So now at this point, unlock, roll back to 0. This is your 20. You're going to see why that makes sense. So that's perfectly there. Lock this. Okay, I'm going to take our Allen wrench, back this screw out. We're going to come up top. Now you see why I like to have the number start at the top. It's just easier to access that lock screw. Pop this wheel off. Take this wheel. Put it on. You can roll that to 20 and lock it down. So now at this point, what we want to do is go back to 20, make sure it's perfect. It may tweak just a little bit based off of where I put the tape and how I looked at the marking pin. So we want to make sure 20 is on, then we can go qualify and literally walk back, shoot 40, 60, 80, 100, and you'll see all of those arrows should drop in. So let's requalify our 20 and then walk back and make sure everything else is dialed. 20 yards. Always recheck your 20. Anytime you shoot your bow, always go back to 20. Just shoot another one at 20. Just to make sure that was not me. Or was me, rather. There we go. I'll pull the one. Ooh, that's dead X, dead X. 20 is absolutely perfect. We're going to leave that arrow in there. Let's go to 40. Boom. Look at that. Right in the bullseye. All right, 60 yards. I couldn't imagine hunting with not having the ability to move my pin. So again, shooting a 2-pin sight. You have 2 pointers. So this is 60. That tells me here I'm 74. So if I'm shooting a rutting buck, I'm shooting a rutting elk, something's moving through the woods and I've already dialed, I can make a decision in my mind what I need to do by straddling the pins, or I could just jump to the next pin. So in this case, there's about 14 yards difference at this distance, 60, 74. Cool. Boy, I got the lucky rabbit foot today. It's a good 80. Woohoo, this is a long way. Son. Oh, that was me. Hit low. Left to right's good. My bubble is really hitting well. I peaked. That was me. We'll shoot one more. Bingo. All right, 80's on. Ooh, 1 arrow left. 100 yards. $100 yards. All right, let's see how we did. All right, it's looking pretty good. So there were 2 shots at 80 that I was peaking. So you got to disregard these 2 right here. This was my 100-yard shot right there. So here's what I want to show you. 20, 30, 40, or excuse me, yeah, 20, 40, 60, 80. There's 20, 40, 60, 80 right there. This is my 80 yard down here at the bottom. 3 X's, 20, 40, and 60 X. Touch low at 80. 100's fine. I just floated off a little bit to the right. That shows you what HHA can do. Now, remember, it's also how you set the sight up. The sight can be manufactured the best in the world, but if you don't set it up correctly, getting the first, the second, and the third axis set, then getting your 20 and 60 perfect. So I feel really confident on this setup right now. I'm going to continue to shoot it. And like I said, before I head out west or before I head to the Midwest for my whitetail hunts, I'm going to take 2 more wheels. So right now I'm at 42. I'm going to take 41 and 43. So that way I know I'm covered in any conditions. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. HHA has some new sights coming out for next year. So if you stay tuned here in the next month or 2, we'll show you the big reveal.